So first and foremost, it's making sure that as an organization, we've got a good understanding of who we are, what we're about, what are our strengths, what can we leverage, what are we trying to do, what space are we in, what capabilities do we have that we can leverage to add value to the extent we acquire something.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Humans of Flippa. So today I have with me Ali Aydar, who is the CEO of Sporcle. Based out of San Francisco, it is a media and entertainment company that believes in making knowledge fun for everyone. So the company owns and operates actually two digital properties now. First is Sporcle.com, which is a user-generated quiz platform. It offers almost 2 million quizzes. It's been played, I think, over 6 billion times. And now the second one is a business that was actually acquired recently on Flippa, which is called typingtest.com. And this is it's actually the internet's go-to typing speed test site. So we're going to get into the details of this deal, as well as just kind of some background of Ali and Sporcle, who I think are really great examples of a higher level acquirer who can also teach those who are either just getting started on their online journey in terms of how to decide what kind of business to get into or how to put a portfolio together. I think a major question that comes up when thinking about buying a business is, what is my strategy or what is the plan? Am I just buying a business to make passive income from an isolated investment, or should my acquisition be part of a larger strategy? So I think this conversation, as I said, is good for buyers who want to answer that question for themselves. But also, if you happen to be a business owner in the education space, you also might want to pay attention because Sporcle could end up being a good future acquirer for you. So with that said, let's get into the show. Ali, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Nick. Great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I feel like I just gave quite a lengthy introduction, but would you be able to tell me a little bit more about yourself and just a little bit more about what Sporcle does and the background of the company?
Yeah, so Sporcle's actually been around now for over 15 years. I've been running the company for 15 years. Actually, the company's been around 17 years. It started out as just that website, Sporcle.com, and then we've added all the other things that you mentioned since then. Most of what we added is through acquisition. We acquired Typing Test. We also acquired a few of those offline trivia businesses that were running events in bars and restaurants, and we stitched them together under one umbrella. And so the company has been built both organically through our own efforts and through acquisitions. Our own efforts have been mainly through what I believe is our world-class product design and engineering teams. I am a computer scientist by trade. I have a computer science degree, as does the founder of the company. And so we think about these things and this business. We start with that perspective. That's the bias we come with. And so we've built a world-class engineering team over time to help us also grow the business.
Yes. So that kind of answers my question a little bit, which is, if we were to go back 15, 17 years, how did you decide to make the acquisitions that you did? I mean, even in the education space, you could have gone in multiple directions. You ultimately decided to go in a very specific direction that currently makes up the Sporcle brand as it exists today. How did you decide to go in that direction? And how did you think about your acquisition strategy? You said you come from your entire or the core founding team was very technical, which could have also meant going into education SaaS, a lot of other apps, a lot of other avenues. How did you think about this and make the decisions that you did to build Sporcle as it exists now?
Yeah, so there was a discussion that we had really early on that I remember that was a really, really important discussion that we had as the early management team. That discussion was around who do we want to be? What kind of company do we want to be? And in that discussion, there were two clear paths that we considered. The first path was to take the brand in a direction that was purely about education. So that would be building tools for teachers, marketing the product, like making it something like Quizlet, if you will, focusing on learning very specific things like maybe SAT prep and other types of test prep, leverage the platform for that. So really think about it from an education perspective, purely an education perspective. The other path was, let's just make it fun. Let's just think about making the brand about a fun way of engaging with content and with knowledge. And we ended up choosing the latter path. At the time, there were two reasons why we chose the latter path. The first was that it was just more interesting to us. It was more consistent with our DNA. We liked fun and we wanted to do things that were fun and we wanted to create fun in the world. And so we felt like taking the brand in that more of an entertainment direction was consistent with our DNA as an early team. And then the second reason is that when we looked at the landscape on the other path, we saw a lot of venture-backed companies trying to sell into school districts, trying to sell school boards, trying to sell superintendents, boards of education, and you have to do it state by state and district by district. And you could see that was a really expensive proposition. And that was not really the way we wanted to go down. And what's happened since then is that there have been, of course, many companies that have been successful building phenomenal education SaaS businesses, other types of education businesses. But there's also there are graveyards full of failed businesses in the space. Would we have been successful? I don't know. Would we have failed? I don't know. We feel like we made the right choice that was consistent with who and what we wanted to be and true to our own DNA.
Yeah. I think for those just starting out in buying online businesses, there is a question about how much of a role should that play about, am I interested in the business, or should I be looking more through an opportunistic lens? This is objectively a good business. I don't have interest in it, but I think it would make profit, and therefore it is the money making machine that it's meant to be. So it sounds like I kind of have your answer here, but if you were to encourage any new buyers or offer any suggestions for how people should think about a smaller level acquisition, what would you suggest to those kind of buyers?
I think my answer might surprise you just a little bit. I would say that, well, I'll first say, to the extent you can find a business that fits squarely with who you are and your interests and your passion, the higher the probability that that's going to succeed, assuming all the other aspects of the business and the business fundamentals line up. However, you don't have to love your product per se, but you do have to love or be really interested in something, some part of the business. There has to be something that you really care about. So I'll use a simple example. Like, let's say there's an e-commerce business out there for sale that sells scarves. You might not be into scarves at all. You might not wear scarves at all. You don't have any interest or passion in scarves, but you might have, and you might come from the world of manufacturing, and you might have an interest in or an expertise in manufacturing processes. And you really care about that, and it's something that you're very interested in, very passionate about, then you can buy that business. You should buy that business. You don't have to necessarily love scarves. You love some part of the manufacturing, great. Buy the business, optimize that business, and use your expertise to grow that business. So you don't necessarily have to have a passion for the item or the one particular product per se, or if you're buying something larger, something that has a set of products, you just have to have something that aligns with who you are, what you're about, and your DNA.
Yeah, and actually, I think you're making an important distinction right now, which is more of the example that you gave kind of speaks more to the experience that someone would have operating that business with, say, you're into manufacturing, for example, which regardless of what kind of product it is, that doesn't really affect as much the experience that you'll have operating the business itself. Mm-hmm. I mean, sure, certain products can be more or less seasonal. Some might have higher returns or different types of customer support. But overall, as far as using the example of an e-commerce business, you should, if you're into manufacturing or inventory management or running advertising or something that's involved with the actual day-to-day of the business, perhaps that is more of what to be mindful about rather than the niche itself, is kind of what I'm taking away from that.
That's you got it. That's exactly right.
Cool.
Now, okay, if the niche though, Nick, is something that you're also passionate about, again, that then you're just layered another thing on top of it, right?
Yeah.
So now there's some part of it that you're interested in, and then you also have some passion or interest in the niche itself. Well, that just adds to the fuel that's behind you. But you don't necessarily have to. Now, but the same works in reverse. Like, you could be super passionate about a product, but I don't like e-commerce, or I don't like the business model, or whatnot, right? Again, the fuel behind your interest in scarves might be enough, right? You have to judge that for yourself.
Got it. So let's talk a little bit about a specific example, which was your recent acquisition of Typing Test. How did you tell me a little bit about how that all happened, how you made the decision that was the right business to acquire, and any details you feel comfortable about, just in terms of going through the transaction, if how Flippa helped during that, anything you're willing to share about that.
Yeah. So the first thing I'll start with is what I just said about knowing who you are in terms of being an individual and choosing to buy a business. That same question or thought process applies organizationally. So first and foremost, it's making sure that as an organization, we've got a good understanding of who we are, what we're about, what are our strengths, what can we leverage, what are we trying to do, what space are we in, what capabilities do we have that we can leverage to add value to the extent we acquire something. So once that understanding exists on an organizational level, then it's being patient to find businesses that fit with who we are, what we're about, and where our capabilities can add a tremendous amount of value to the business that we're acquiring. So that means saying no or ignoring a lot of deal flow that comes into my inbox or that I might see online, because we're looking for something that fits with who we are. So the opportunity for typing tests actually, and a lot of these opportunities honestly come fortuitously. There is some serendipity involved, but it's manufactured serendipity. And what I mean by that is, hey, I'm on a lot of email lists. I've developed a lot of relationships. And so a lot of things come to me organically just based on who I am, who I know, how I've chosen to position our organization in the marketplace. And so because of that positioning, some serendipity it naturally occurs. And so typing test appeared in my inbox one day. And honestly, it was the when I look back on it in my email history, it was the second email I got about typing test. So if you're out there trying to sell a business, you don't have to stop at one email. Sometimes it takes a couple, just because everyone's super busy. But I have to say, as soon as I saw it, I was like, ooh, this one might be the one. And we got on the phone with the seller, and the seller graciously went over the business and answered all of our questions. And when we got off the phone, we kind of looked at each other and said, "Yep, that looks like it. We're definitely interested, right?" And so from there, it was just getting our own internal ducks in a row, and making sure that we were able to finance the purchase. We did end up financing it in part. We paid ourselves, and then we used some debt to buy the business. So we had to use a bank. But again, it was a bank we had a relationship with. We'd done a deal before. They had a good experience with us. And so again, leveraging those relationships to make the deal come together. The seller had told us on that first call that they had already had a couple of offers, and so that we needed to move quickly. I'm sure that he did. I don't really know what those other offers were, but we moved very quickly, and we were able to get the deal done. The process was, I have to say, look, I've done in my career, I've done much larger acquisitions. I've done smaller acquisitions. When you get to the 7-figure size, the acquisitions get a little bit more complicated. Both sides are a little bit more. There's a lot of discernment, a lot of legal language that needs to be worked out, a lot of nuance. What was great was Flippa had an advisor on the deal that was just, she was phenomenal. There were points where there was some friction, and she was able to smooth things over on both sides and make the deal actually go very, very smoothly. So it ended up being a as deals go, it ended up being a pretty smooth deal.
Nice. Now you mentioned that this was there was leverage involved in this. Does this change depending on if you are, maybe backtracking just a little bit, does this change if you are an individual versus a company in terms of how you evaluated this deal and whether you made the decision to bootstrap a deal or to use leverage as part of your strategy?
Well, yeah, I think everybody's situation is unique, and you have to judge yourself how much leverage you want to use, how much do you want to find partners or equity investors to co-invest with you. Do you want to do it yourself? There are a bunch of variables in the mix there. For us, using leverage it's very clear that that's what the right strategy is for us. Sporcle is bootstrapped. We don't have any investors. We've built this business purely organically. We have a lot of different and very unique assets, and using leverage allows us to capitalize on the assets that we have without also going deep into our cash reserves to make an acquisition of this size.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know. Now knowing that Sporcle as the company was bootstrapped, yeah, that is an interesting move to rely on, to essentially not bootstrap other acquisitions. Is it because you were mentioning it makes sense as part of your strategy? Is it because you're looking only at businesses that are of a certain size, and at that size it doesn't make sense or that would be too much capital that you're using to acquire that business?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Now, look, I'm a little bit size agnostic. I'm not saying every deal has to be a 7-figure deal or even bigger, but for example, if there was a 6-figure deal that we looked at that was somehow a direct bullseye into our capabilities and it fit within what we're doing and who we are and what we're about, and we felt like, hey, we could take that 6-figure business and turn it into a 7-figure business, we can 3x it or 4x it because of our overall organizational capabilities, then absolutely we would be interested in that. So size is not, there is a certain size where if it's just a stable cash flow generating business, then that doesn't really have opportunity, but fits in what we're doing, that's fine. But it does need a little bit more size to make sense, because we're already a relatively large small business.
Yeah. And when you say you have the capability to grow a business, what specifically were you looking at when determining that this acquisition, we would be able to grow it, or we feel confident that we'd be able to grow it, we have the capability to do so?
Yeah. So look, I think before we even start looking at any kind of business, when we're going through the exercise of who are we, what are we about, what are we good at, part of that process is understanding what our core areas of expertise are. And when I look at our organization, we have several core areas of expertise, some of which I believe are world-class. I mentioned our engineering team already. I would put our engineering team up against anybody, especially of equal size to us. And so if it's a matter of, hey, this thing just needs to be engineered and there's a 3 or 4x opportunity here, then great. Another world-class capability we have is I believe is through monetization. We've been monetizing. I've been monetizing websites for over 20 years now. I believe we have a world-class team that knows how to monetize websites, not just with ads, but also with subscriptions. And so we'll look at it from the perspective of that capability. Then again, looking at our offline capabilities, we employ over 600 trivia hosts who have been trained by us, who know how to walk into a venue and operate an event. And to have that army is a certain capability. So, I mean, I can go on and on. So we take a look at those capabilities, and knowing those capabilities and having them top of mind is important when looking at different opportunities and different businesses to buy.
Yeah. So what does the future for Sporcle look like as far as the kinds of businesses that would be amazing to acquire, ones that are on your radar, for maybe any business owners that might be listening to this, or anybody who might be want to get involved with what you're doing?
Certainly love talking to people in the education space. Anything anyone's doing in the education space is very interesting to us. Anything to do with making knowledge fun, that's our bullseye. But then again, anything where we feel like our capabilities, especially the world-class ones, can be brought to bear to add a tremendous amount of value, we're going to look at that kind of business with a lot of interest.
Yeah. And I think before this call, you did mention that you were considering getting others involved, or kind of allowing people to work with Sporcle in some capacity if they wanted to be involved in future acquisitions. Did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, look, we would like to do more acquisitions in the future as they come about. Part of the challenge of executing 7 or 8 figure acquisitions is figuring out the right financing structure, whether it's debt, whether it's getting investors involved. One thing that we've contemplated is, because look, Sporcle is like I said, it's a 17-year-old business. We've bootstrapped it. We're not getting investors in Sporcle. Sporcle's going to be an independently owned company, probably in perpetuity. However, we do want to take advantage of our capabilities and continue to do acquisitions. So we are thinking about structures where we could bring investors in to co-invest with us into different types of acquisitions that we do, especially as we think about larger deals, even beyond the 7-figure deal that we did for typing tests. So whether that's a special purpose vehicle to do acquisitions, whether that's other forms of debt, preferred shares, we're going to work that out as opportunities come about. But part of really being able to pull these off is also building capabilities around financing structure.
Yeah. Well, in that regard, if somebody was interested, how can people connect with you to learn more about that?
My email is the best way to reach me, ali@sporcle.com, ali@sporcle.com.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we are just crossing the 30-minute mark. So I think I'm going to wrap this up here. Thank you so much, Ali. I will leave all the contact information, any other links that you want me to include in the show notes. So for anyone listening, you can access that at the bottom of the description. And thank you all for joining this episode of Humans of Flippa, and we'll see you on the next one.